Well, that wasn't quite what I expected. A season that I once thought was going to start 3-0 for Northwestern. Well, Northwestern now finds itself at 1-2. Let's talk about this SIU game.
You are Locked On Northwestern, your daily podcast on the Northwestern Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Northwestern, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Carter Bird, and thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day for anything and everything Northwestern. We are available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can find us. We're on YouTube as well. Just search Locked On Northwestern. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a review, leave a comment. All of those things help us so much. We would love to get your feedback. We would love to interact with you. But yeah, here we are after a head scratcher on Saturday. SIU, the Salukis, 31, Northwestern, 24. Tell you what, I just didn't see this coming. I really didn't. I thought that this Northwestern team, despite the loss to Duke, was positioned to still play out a pretty strong season. I thought we were going to see more of what happened against Nebraska and less of what we saw against Duke. Well, turns out we got a worse version of what we saw against Duke. It was totally shocking. Like, when I first was trying to come up with the words for it, I mean, I was at a loss of words. I mean, it just was... It's now you have a once promising season after that week 0 win against Nebraska in Dublin. Now the season is somewhat kind of teetering on the edge, hanging by a thread, because you have to get hot and the schedule only gets tougher from here. What was interesting is, and we're going to start by talking about the offense here. It was interesting to me that Northwestern struggled to pass. And that was the most puzzling thing that I saw in this game. It was a team in Southern Illinois that was allowing about 380 passing yards a game coming in. And Ryan Helinski had faced 2 Power 5 defenses in a row and had looked good. Against Nebraska, he looked awesome. Against Duke, he was pretty solid. He just looked uncomfortable. I mean, at no point did he, or especially early on, did he look like he was settling into a groove. I mean, he started 7 of 18. He did finish 20 of 25 on the back half of the game to finish for 27 for 43, 63% completion percentage. But that was only, those 27 completions only went for 213 yards. So they weren't pushing the ball down the field, or at least he wasn't completing it. He was 19 of 23 behind the line of scrimmage to 5 yards downfield, just 10 of 23, 5+ yards down the field. He did have a touchdown, but he had 2 interceptions. And that's what plagued this offense is the 4 turnovers. You can't turn the ball over 4 times in a game like this when your passing game is as disjointed as it is, and you're having to rely on that running game that was solid. I mean, it wasn't spectacular. You can't set up a team like this with a short field. That's a recipe for disaster, and that's a recipe for an FCS upset. Helinski was sacked 3 times. I guess that's what threw him off. He just looked like a totally different guy. That very calm, cool, collected, in rhythm, on target guy that we saw the first 2 weeks. The guy who understood the offense, knew where he was going with the ball, didn't really look like it. I mean, 11 of his 27 completions were to running backs. 8 of those were to Evan Hull. I mean, it was one of those, at times he looked frantic, checking the ball down to the running backs, looking for the screen pass, swing pass, wherever, check down. He was just out of rhythm, and it was shocking given what we had seen the previous games from Ryan Helinski to this point. And man, I mean, when you look around the offense, it's disappointing because I didn't feel like the other position groups played poorly. I mean, Evan Hull is still good. 25 rushes, 124 yards, a touchdown, 8 receptions for 33 yards, another fumble 2 weeks in a row, another killer fumble. He's the leading rusher and the leading receiver still on the season. 308 yards rushing on the season, 301 yards receiving. He has 161 more rushing yards than Cam Porter, who is second on the team. He has 77 more receiving yards than Malik Washington, who is second on the team as well. It's just I find myself going through the stats trying to put it all together, and it's just, even though Northwestern did, I believe they scored first, it was still a somewhat slow start. I mean, you saw Helinski 7 of 18 to open the game. You're just 2 of 7 on third down to open the game. You go 6 of 10 the rest of the way, but when you're turning the ball over, it's too little too late. So you're 8 of 17 on third down. I thought Malik Washington was solid. He had 4 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. Actually had a Pro Football Focus grade of 75.2. The tight ends continue to find a way to get involved. You're seeing Thomas Gordon with 2 more catches for 18 yards. Marshall Lang, 3 catches for 25 yards on 6 targets. I thought everyone else played fine. I thought, like, the only glaring thing was Ryan Helinski just looked uncomfortable, and it showed. I mean, it felt like you were watching 2021 Ryan Helinski out there rather than the guy you'd seen through 2 games. I mean, you can't blame the offensive line. The offensive line graded out really, really well. I mean, from highest grade to lowest grade, I mean, your left tackle, Peter Skoronski, graded out at a 90.3 according to Pro Football Focus. Your right tackle, Caleb Tiernan, 78.2. Charlie Schmidt at center, 75.3. Those are your 3 highest offensive grades. Then you have Josh Preeb at 67.5. And then Ethan Wiedeker had a 59.1, your lowest grade on the offensive line. But on the whole, that's solid. The offensive line's not the problem. The problem is that the quarterback, it was disjointed. It was uncomfortable. It just wasn't what we had become accustomed to with him over these first 2 games. It was shocking because by all indications coming in, this should have been the easiest matchup he had to put up numbers. And for whatever reason, it wasn't. And I struggle to figure out why. But he's gonna have to get it back if this Northwestern season has any hopes. He's got to get it back, because if he doesn't, things can spiral. I mean, and the defense isn't good enough to carry this team right now. It's not a typical up year Northwestern, pretty good top 25, top 30 unit. It's just not that right now. And I mean, we're going to talk about the defense here in a second, but first we're gonna tell you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this week's games. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports, events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, so let's talk about this defense some, because the defense, I keep looking for progress, and I keep getting underwhelmed. Now, what I will say is credit to the front. The front played the run well. And that's where I think these linebackers' strength is as well. Gallagher and Mueller, kind of your downhill thumper type of linebackers. because you held SIU to 97 rushing yards, which is a lot better than the week before against Duke, when Duke kind of ran all over you. Just 2.7 yards per rush. You'll take that every time. The pass defense is bad. And part of that is you have 4 DBs out with injury, including AJ Hampton, including Coco Azuma. And that hurts because you need that veteran leadership. You don't have that depth back there right now. But that group back there let Nick Baker start 11 of 11. He's 14 of 16 before he threw his interception. From the interception on, he was 9 of 18. So once you got the interception, maybe you rattled him a little bit because he wasn't quite the same guy. And you did manage to rack up 3 sacks. Xander Mueller got 1, Aiden Hubbard got 1, Ryan Johnson got 1, but you didn't have a lot of QB hurries outside that. You had 0 besides the 3 sacks. 10 tackles for a loss. That kind of is to the point of that front that played well against the run. Gallagher, Lewis, McLaughlin, Story, Metz, Hubbard, and Johnson all had 1. Holmes had half a tackle for a loss, and Mueller had 2.5 tackles for a loss. Gallagher led the team in tackles with 12. On the back end, Jeremiah Lewis continues to impress me some. You saw his 8 tackles. Did have a tackle for a loss. I just think that right now with the injuries you have on the back end, he's somebody who is pretty consistently, or he's giving you the most consistent performance on the back end. But man, something you noticed when it took place in this game, that second level is slow. That second level is so slow. Because when SIU figured out ways to get those linebackers in space, I mean, it was ugly. I mean, you saw the 57-yard touchdown pass where Bryce Gallagher's running his heart out. And he's just beat. And I mean, it looks like he's running quicksand. It's bad. It's ugly. It's not good. And it's surprising because when it's exposed, the lack of speed at linebacker in coverage and in space is glaring. It's glaring. It's not Power 5 level speed between Gallagher and Mueller right now. Solid players in the running game. Mueller keeps finding himself in position to have these interceptions. He had the pick today, or on Saturday, rather. But yeah, I mean, it's shocking that this is continuing to be an issue. You're just not very deep on the back end, and you've dealt with a ton of injuries back there. Second level is very, very slow. SIU found ways to pick on that group and make it difficult on them. And yeah, I mean, Nick Baker ended up being 25 of 37, 261 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Really strong day from him. Little 5'8" quarterback back there. Was averaging 10.4 yards per completion and 7.05 yards per attempt. He just was kind of dotting you up a little bit back there at times. He gave 5 yards of play. So, I mean, basically every 2 plays they ran, they were getting a first down. And if this defense isn't going to step up significantly, some of these young guys in the secondary have to start to show some serious progress. Because you're not far down the road from welcoming Ohio State. Trying to recall, is that game at home? That game is it's at home. So you are welcoming Ohio State. You're not that far away from having CJ Stroud, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jackson Smith and Jigba come to Evanston. And by that time, you got to figure out the secondary, because otherwise that could get sideways. They could get sideways in a hurry, and it could get ugly, it could get bad. Get everything you don't want it to be. And so that's what I'm worried about. something's got to give. Something's got to change. This defense has to get better. If it's not, then it relies on the offense to bail them out, put up huge numbers every week, which they put up pretty big numbers the first 2 weeks. But then when you have that Ryan Helinski off game kind of seemingly out of nowhere, you end up getting in a spot where you're losing to an FCS team like Southern Illinois. And that can't happen right now, especially when you're trying to scratch and crawl back from a 3-9 year last year, trying to get back to a bowl game. And yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about what does this mean going forward? What does this mean going forward? What does Northwestern have to do? But first, know what your team is up against across the Big Ten with Locked On Big Ten. Every day, host Nate Dickinson and the local experts of Locked On take you across the Big Ten in 30 minutes. Make sure Locked On Big Ten is your second listen. Locked On Big Ten. All right, so kind of as this Northwestern team goes forward, like what does this mean? Well, you had a real shot after you beat Nebraska. I thought you should have beaten Duke. I thought you were better team on the field against Duke. You're the more talented team on Saturday. You just didn't get you turn the ball over 4 times. You get a weird performance out of your quarterback. And their quarterback kind of balls out a little bit, and you end up losing that game to Southern Illinois. So you're 1-2. You got to get hot. You got to pick yourself up off the mat. You should be 3-0 right now, but you're 1-2. You welcome Miami of Ohio in town this weekend before you go to what appears to be a really good Penn State team. A Penn State team that I had doubts about until they went to Auburn and drummed Auburn by 29. Yeah, I mean, you get Penn State, you get Wisconsin. You got to stop the run in those games. It can't be that Duke game again. It's got to be like this Southern Illinois game. It's got to be like that Nebraska game. If you can do that, maybe you can split those games. Maybe, hopefully, you get Ryan Helinski back to the way he was playing. Hopefully, you get another performance like Evan Hull did against Duke. If you get that, then you're capable. You are capable of standing toe-to-toe with any of these teams on the schedule besides maybe Ohio State. A couple things go your way. Turnovers go your way. You can win any game on the schedule. But after that, you have your bye. You got to regroup. You got to get healthy, especially on that back end. Because then you got to come out of that bye, and you got to go jump Maryland in their place. You got to go get that win because that one's imperative. That's the one that I had preseason circled as the second swing game on the schedule other than week 0 against Nebraska, because I thought Nebraska set a tone that I thought would carry through the first 3 weeks, through the first 4 weeks, really. But turns out it did not. Maryland is the other swing game in my mind. Because the week after that, you're playing an abysmal Iowa offense. Spencer Petras better not throw for 250, 300 yards on this Northwestern defense. He's not going to do it to anybody really all year because he's not a good quarterback. You need to go beat Iowa. I don't think Iowa's that good. That defense is really good. But this Northwestern offense can scrape together enough points. And that Iowa offense is bad enough that Northwestern can absolutely win that game. Should win that game in my mind. Then, look, let's call the Ohio State game what it is. You just got to survive. You have to survive. That one's going to be tough. It's going to be miserable. You got to figure out a way to get out of it healthy. Ohio State's too good right now. I don't think this Northwestern team has the talent to be out there with those guys right now and compete. Then you get Minnesota. Kind of similar to that those Penn State and Wisconsin games, you have to stop the run. I mean, Ibrahim is back and he's running wild on everybody, and you got to stop the run. So that's important. Then you go on the road to Purdue, which I'll be interested to see what Purdue is at that point. Purdue is 1-2 on the year as well. Couple tough losses, like heartbreaking, rip your heart out of your chest losses. And the question there is, can anybody in this Northwestern secondary, can anybody stop Charlie Jones? If you can stop Charlie Jones, you have a chance. You have a chance against that Purdue game, against that Purdue team. And you can go in and beat them in West Lafayette. I mean, I don't see a reason why you can't. Then finally you get Illinois, and you need to beat Illinois. I know Illinois has a competent offense this year, but if you do all that, if you get that win against Illinois, if you go 1-1 against Penn State and Wisconsin, if you beat Miami, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 Iowa. Then Maryland and Purdue, if you split that, you're going to a bowl game. The goal needs to be getting back to a bowl game. That needs to be where things readjust. That is the primary goal. Then the second goal, if you reach that, is just how far can this Northwestern team climb into this Big Ten West race. But it starts Saturday. You can't lose 3 in a row. You can't lose to Miami of Ohio. That happens, I get worried about this thing unraveling. Ryan Helinski needs to come back and have a big game this next week, because the defense needs it right now until they can get healthy. It's important for this Northwestern team to bounce back on Saturday. Well, that's probably going to do it for this episode today. We will be back later this week for continue to talk about this Southern Illinois game, talk about what was said afterwards, start to preview this Miami of Ohio game. Thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen for anything and everything Northwestern. I'm repping the new Northwestern shirt from Home Field. But we're available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. YouTube, just search Locked On Northwestern. Subscribe, turn notifications on, leave a review, leave a comment. We'd love the feedback. And see you next time.